Away they go. The Bombers are 8-0. Welcome inside Game Day After Dark. Darren Bombing to my virtual right. Mr. Manitoba Football, Mike Still joining us here on Bonfire Sports. What's going on, Mike? We just witnessed a heck of a battle, a real entertaining football game, and got the result Blue Bombers Nation was looking for.
Most definitely, and won the season series too against Calgary, which is
Right.
huge for the playoffs, home field advantage. Obviously we want to have those games at IGF, so that would be massive coming down the stretch there. But yeah, what a great game! These two teams never disappoint, and definitely didn't disappoint again tonight. Another absolute classic, DB.
Yeah, and lots to get to on the post-game show here. Outstanding performances, not just from a couple players, but like a handful had really, really strong games in Calgary. The Stampeders came to play, Mike, no question. Maybe not capping drives in the first half with touchdowns instead of field goals. The Blue Bombers defense stepping up as it seems to like uncannily continually do, and that is allow drives, come into our zone, come into our red zone, and then they just shut it down and force teams to kick field goals. Then offensively, monstrosity performances from Zach Collaros, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, threw for 270 yards tonight. Brady Oliveira, his first 100-yard rushing game of the season, averaging over 7 yards per carry. Dalton Schoen, we can say it. We're not jinxing anybody. He's runaway most outstanding rookie nominee right now through 8 weeks of the CFL season. He pulls in 2 more touchdowns to have 7 on the year. And then, of course, the surprise of the depth chart yesterday, Mike. 4 weeks, no practices, activated off the 6-game injured list early. Winnipeg's native son, Oak Park High School, Nick Demsky, absolutely went off today. 7 catches on 9 targets, 69 yards, 2 touchdowns, and the number I always like to look at, second down conversions, because all 3 second down conversions Nick Demsky had tonight were really, really big.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I just want to point out something that Nick said during the TSN broadcast. He was talking to Sarah Orleski, and she asked him about the fact that he hasn't been practicing. He just comes right into the lineup, and she's asking him about that. And he goes, "I was still working out, so I can't have any excuses." That's a classic Nick Demsky answer to the question.
Yeah.
This guy, he's just one of the humblest people you will ever meet. Even after the Grey Cup, last year, he always goes back to team every single time, and he's just a great guy to have on your roster for so many different reasons. And I think just to kind of touch on that quickly, DB, in terms of his value, it's just the fact that he can line up in so many different places and positions for that team. He's a guy that it's very hard to replicate what he does in the offense. He can line up at running back, he can line up at slot, he can do the fly sweeps, he can block super well, all that stuff. I mean, and it just goes
and
back
run
to
traditionally between you can take out Brady Oliveira and just like put the ball in his belly and run him between the tackles.
Exactly. And I mean, for goodness sake, like the guy was a running back in high school. I mean, he was a quarterback for a year in high school for Oak Park. Then he was a running back. And interestingly, too, with the Bisons, right? I mean, he was originally recruited as a running back. Then he gets there and they already have Anthony Coombs and they've already got Keenan LaFrance. So Dolby goes, I got 3 running backs here that can all legitimately play and all legitimately start. And they all did that. But he's like, we got to put Nick in a place where we can get him and also get Anthony Coombs on the field at the exact same time. So move him to slot back. He does nothing but become one of the best receivers in the history of the program. Still has the best touchdown celebration in U of M history, the page turner in the end zone there.
I love that.
It's a classic. It's an absolute classic. It's just his versatility. You just can't put someone in that spot and do the things that Nick Demsky does, and he showed it again today.
No question he did. I love how you mentioned the touchdown celebration because when they used to have, it's not there anymore. So this touchdown celebration just has to go down in Winnipeg sports lore. But a Winnipegger on top of the old University of Manitoba logo, not the Bison's logo, but the academic logo where it's got the book. And he scores a touchdown, goes right on top of that logo, and starts flipping the pages. Like one of my favorites that he even continued from Manitoba to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers doing that touchdown. I think he did it in a Banjo Bowl of years gone by. But, as everybody in the live chat brings all the energy and heat to Bonfire Sports, Andrea says it perfectly, who's watching live on YouTube. Great game. It really was. Waiters says, love Blue Bomber wins this time of year. Yeah, like warm summer night, getting your weekend going. It's a long weekend. People get to kick back and enjoy not just, like another football game on TSN, but the two best teams, hands down, in the league, and they go toe to toe, Mike. It was really a back and forth match, and you didn't know which way this game was going to go. I would say you couldn't even say one team had momentum over the other at any point until maybe late when Winnipeg was able to get up 2 scores.
Yeah, and I think that one of the factors in that is something that you talked about a lot in the lead up to this game, and I know a lot of people talked about a lot. It's just the poise and the composure and the history with Bo Levi Mitchell. And I see that comment, Jeremy. Thanks very much. Yeah, one year he did dress up with me as me for Halloween.
Well, Mike O'Shea, Mike Still.
Appreciate you, man. But yeah, Bo Levi Mitchell, only 2 losses coming off the bye, and then Zach Collaros, only 2 losses as a Bomber starter, and factoring in, when those losses happened too. So these are two. I mean, let's be honest here, two best quarterbacks right now going at it. Statistically and just historically in terms of what they've been able to do at the CFL level. And you knew we were in for a classic. And I really think, like you mentioned it already, DB, but I really think that the Bombers' defense in that first half, and being able to hold Calgary to those field goals instead of touchdowns. If you look at the score at the end of this game, really, that's what it came down to at the end of the day was being able to be stout on defense when it mattered. You've got players in those positions that can kind of step up. But the other thing, too, that it's been talked about a lot, but I just want to reiterate it, is the poise of the Bombers secondary. I mean, goodness gracious, coming into this year, losing 3 players who were all-stars last season. DeAndre Alford, Alden Darby, and then obviously Brandon Alexander's got that injury. Just the poise of that group, and the guys have been able to come in and plug and play effectively and just do their job when they need to. So, another instant classic and another great job by that Bombers defense in a game that obviously the offense is being highlighted, but the D really stepped up in key situations too when they needed to.
No, well said, Mike. For those of all of you out there just joining us, Mike Still, Mr. Manitoba Football, as I like to refer to him, great football mind, joining us here on the post-game show. Hit the hotline, 816-TIPS, 816-8477. I already got a text from Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. So people watching everywhere, not just the Bombers and Stampeders go toe-to-toe, but Game Day After Dark here as well on Bonfire Sports. Nick Demski, Zach Collaros, Dalton Schoen, Brady Oliveira, definitely the story of this game, the Blue Bombers offense. We are going to get into all of the details and talk about some of the finer points of the game, Mike. But on a macro perspective, how big this win was for the Blue Bombers in the standings. 8-0, it bumps Calgary down to 3rd place in the CFL and in the West Division. BC still at 5-1. It wins the season series for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, looking towards those 2 games against the BC Lions already, October 15th and 28th, that bookend the Blue Bombers' 3rd and final bye this season. But this was the most difficult stretch of the season for Winnipeg, where they had to play 3 games in a row on the road, play Calgary twice in the month of July, face BC. That game, I don't think people realize how big that win in BC was, 43-22. Not just a dominant performance where they double up on the Lions pretty much, but they doused water on the hottest team in the CFL. You look what Nathan Rourke did last night in Saskatchewan. You got Odell Willis and current and former players all amazed at the talent of the young starting quarterback of the BC Lions. But Winnipeg pushes through a sloppy, ugly game in Edmonton. They go into Calgary in a team that just came off a bye, shouldn't be overlooked, after getting beat in Winnipeg by the Blue Bombers. Bad taste in their mouth, lots of film study, lots of rest. And Winnipeg goes in there, and despite being without Greg Ellingson, without Kyrie Wilson, without Carlton Agadosi, without so many players that are missing from their lineup right now, they're on their third string safety. They're on their second string weak side linebacker. They're deep into their receiving core. They're on their second string center. They're without Jackson Jeffcoat. And now a short week, maybe the final piece of this really, really tough stretch for the Blue Bombers, where they haven't really shown too much fallibility at this point. They seem quite infallible. Not saying they're perfect, but they're finding a way to get the job done. They've got a game in 5 days in Montreal. I'd be surprised if they even had one open practice here in Winnipeg this week.
Yeah, definitely. Another short week, but anybody on the team is going to tell you the same thing they tell you every time anybody asks that type of question, and it doesn't faze them, doesn't affect them. They're professional football players, professional athletes, two-time defending Grey Cup champions. It's just another game, and especially when you're locked in like this. I got to wonder, DB, and I don't know the answer to this, I'm just curious. Yep. When you're playing a short week and things like that, who knows? Maybe there's some momentum that way too, of kind of being in a flow and kind of, not having as much time to think about that kind of stuff. I'm not too sure, but at the end of the day, just going 1-0 each week. That's the theme for the team whenever they ask those types of questions. So that's certainly going to continue to be the answer when anybody kind of asks that type of stuff, for sure. So it's going to be an exciting matchup next week, but we'll obviously talk more about that as we get closer to the game itself.
Yeah, I'll just say this. I don't think Kahari Jones or Baron Miles was the problem in Montreal. And, they're without those two now and looking forward. Love this comment from Turk, who's watching live on YouTube. Was a statement game, no question. Mike, I had people reaching out to me over the last few days, on the Bonfire hotline, on Game Day Winnipeg with Chris Walby, when we went live yesterday, on Bonfire midweek on Tuesday, as we always do at 7:30 here on the channel, saying this is a good game for the Blue Bombers to lose. Calgary's a good team, and if they're going to lose one, it's good to lose one to a good team. I understand. I kind of get that. But if you take a bigger picture of it, do you want to lose to a team that you're likely going to face in the playoffs one way or another? Do you want to lose? Do you want to give that psychological ammunition to a team, to have them know, and that they got the better of you at one point this season? I don't think this was a good game for Winnipeg to lose. A short week and the first of a home and home against an East Division team like Montreal. Losing in Montreal on Thursday, coming back to Winnipeg the next week and beating Montreal, I think that's a lot more digestible than losing to the Stampeders and then beating Montreal in back-to-back weeks. Again, this is the most difficult stretch of the season for Winnipeg. I'm pretty sure they're the last team in the CFL to get a bye. Some teams already have had 2 byes this season. Unbelievable to think that, and Winnipeg hasn't had one yet. So they have a bye week 11, which is in mid-August. They'll have a bye week 16, which is in mid to late September, and then that final bye week 20, the week before the final week of the season, which will help them. They'll have the BC Lions at IG Field to wrap the season on October 28th. The Halloween game I always enjoy so much when it's in Winnipeg. But those buys will come in handy in the final stretch of the season. But Mike, from your perspective in following football so closely here in the province and in the city of Winnipeg and even in the CFL and the NFL, going long stretches without a bye, in particular to start a season, can be very, very taxing on a club.
Yeah, for sure. We're seeing, right now there are some key players that are out with injuries, obviously. Greg Ellingson is the one that's most notable that, is a big storyline. But yeah, for sure. It increases the opportunity to get hurt when you have a schedule like that. I'm sure there are situations, we've talked about Mike Miller in the past. I know there's other guys where they're resting, they're not necessarily practicing every single day to try and kind of preserve their bodies as veterans as they get older, not necessarily needing to be out there as much on the day-to-day basis. But yeah, certainly that, at the end of the day too, though, if you want to come up with another reason why, everyone's against this kind of thing, if you want to play that storyline, then you could use, look at our schedule and, look how long until we have a bye kind of situation. So it's more fuel to the fire, I think, as well in certain aspects. So, I think that's certainly something to keep in mind. Great comment here. Winnipeg wins and Sask loses. That's a perfect weekend. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
couldn't agree more with that comment for sure. I'm sure at some point too we'll talk about Sask and the situation going on there a little bit. Yeah, definitely a great weekend. And going back quickly, sorry, to your comment, Darren, about Calgary and Montreal and winning and losing against certain teams. Anytime you're playing a team in your division, you want to win those games. I mean, that's just a no-brainer in terms of playoff positioning and, just being able to have the upper hand in that regard. So, I mean, it's not every game is important, but those Western Division matchups are that much more important, especially against a team like Calgary. And I touched on it earlier, but who doesn't want to play an IGF in the playoffs? I mean, if you're an away team, you don't want to go there. I mean, if you look at historically what's going on.
It's hard to win there in July. Imagine trying to win there in October, November, right?
Yeah, you do not want to come to IGF in the playoffs. It is not a place you want to be for any team. So, if you're the Bombers, you're just racking these wins up, especially divisionally. I mean, that's just massive for the postseason. And can't understate just how important it was to win this game and to get that season series against the Calgary team that offensively is one of the teams. Obviously, BC has done it too, in terms of their record this year, but offensively, one of the teams that can match the Bombers, and then defensively being able to sort of have some key players. Malik Henry's had a great season for the Stampeders and their receiving core in general. So with all that stuff in mind, this was such an important victory for Winnipeg and just being able to control their own fate, essentially, as the season goes along.
Absolutely. I love this comment from Larry Ward, who's watching live on YouTube. What's going on, Larry? Thanks for joining us. The word juggernaut comes to mind when Larry thinks of these Winnipeg Blue Bombers. That's hard to argue right now. Like, there are good teams. I remember watching the Calgary Stampeders of years gone by, that kind of introduction of Bo Levi Mitchell to the CFL, watching Jeff Garcia quarterback that team, watching Henry Burris quarterback that team to a Grey Cup, and nobody really giving them a lot of respect when Henry was quarterbacking that team and finding a way to get it done. What do you think of this comment from Steve, who he's fiery tonight in Bonfire? I'm seeing your comments, Steve. Of course, yeah, Steve. It's Steve today. It's freezing tomorrow. But either way, BC is a better team than Calgary. What do you think of that, Mike?
Offensively, I mean, Kadeem Carey in the run game for Calgary. I think that overall, and just with Bo Levi, I mean, if you're talking specifically overall as a team, I think that Calgary has a little bit of a better run game. And so that's hard to say. In terms of quarterback comparisons, I mean, Bo Levi Mitchell has more experience, but I think you're getting a little bit more versatility on Nathan Rourke because of what he can do as a runner, as a rusher as well. And just his ability to he's a young quarterback, but the composure he has is impressive. Bo Levi, historically, and what he's done in the CFL, you can't deny his achievements. I would say, in terms of the quarterback position, I like BC a little bit more right now than I do Calgary. As an offense as a whole, I think Calgary has a little bit more there, but that's not to say that BC's receivers aren't spectacular. I mean, they've been on a roll this year for sure. So it's really going to kind of come down to their matchups against each other to kind of answer that question. I feel like that they're both teams that can quick strike at any minute. So I think that's probably how I would answer that question. But I know we'll probably talk about Kadeem Carey a little bit more. This game we talked about, offenses. I really feel like the run game was a humongous part of this game for both teams. And Kadeem Carey is coming in leading the CFL in yards per carry at 6.5. Absolutely spectacular in terms of second effort yardage, but Brady was also. And I mean, Brady, I was talking to a few guys that know Brady well during this game, and they had noted, and that's something that I saw too when he played in high school, is he always plays at his best when he's angry. When he's running angry, he's fired up, he always plays at his best, and that's exactly what happened here again today. We've seen tons of people in the comments shouting out Brady and shouting out the O-line and shouting out the run game. And I'll get on that as well, because he just had an absolutely tremendous game today. His yardage after first contact was absolutely brilliant. Did a good job pass blocking, gave Zach Collaros time to throw the ball. No turnovers from the offense, didn't allow a sack. So the run game, just humongous for the Bombers and just a huge story in this game overall too. DB, I sorry to cut you off, but I don't think we can hear you on the
Oh, I
stream.
apologize. How about that?
You're good now. I was worried. I thought it was on my end. It's like, oh, did I screw something up again? Oops.
No, appreciate that. Thanks everybody for letting me know. Yeah, like Tyler Fabry, University of Manitoba Bison and current offensive line coach of the Sturgeon Heights Huskies. I was just saying how they're an absolute pipeline of talent to U Sports and to the Canadian Football League. But they won the line of scrimmage, and to see Brady Oliveira work in space, and he mentioned this in some of his post-game comments, to work in space, to have the opportunity in space to make guys miss. That's something that Winnipeg and Brady Oliveira in particular hasn't been able to do so far this season. Tonight, they found ways to get him into space, whether it was the play calling of Buck Pierce or, having Nick Demsky in the lineup and having a little bit of a threat to a different side of the field or a different area of the defense's responsibility, or blocking from some of those receivers as well, or whatever it was. It worked, and Brady in space was able to help make guys miss, averaging 7.3 yards per carry. That's so reminiscent of the number I so often hear from fans saying, Johnny Augustine averaged 7.3 yards per carry. They got to give him the ball more. Well, there was Brady tonight taking full advantage of his 15 carries, 110 yards, pitches in with a couple catches for 16 as well. Surely Winnipeg wants to ensure that they're able to keep this run game going. I really do believe, Andrew Harris or not, it continues to be the reason why Winnipeg's offense is dangerous.
Yeah, and you touched on something that I want to add to there, DB, just in terms of the versatility at the position. But in this game, it was Oliveira that was getting all the carries. We've seen there's been shared responsibility with Oliveira and Augustine, primarily those two for the season. And I think when you are the lead back mentally, there's just a different amount of confidence to your game. You get into the flow and the rhythm. And the reason I bring this up, some backs like it, some backs don't. Manitoba Bison's running backs, they had a bunch last year, 3 or 4 of them. I was talking to Mike Rashad, who was one of the backs. And I'm not discounting anything they did as an offense, and I'm not trying to question play calling.
Former Winnipeg Rifle, I have to say.
Former Winnipeg Rifle as well, yes. And Grant Park Pirate, my alum, high school level too. Division II champions. Anyways, he was telling me that as a running back, he needs his carries to get into a rhythm. It's something that's really important to him. Now, everybody's a little bit different that way, but at least from my perspective, I feel like when it's just one guy, when it's just Brady running the rock and he's got that rhythm, and he's got that momentum, and he's running over guys, and he's just consistently that lead guy, I think that mentally that does help a little bit. Obviously, I'm not going to try and pretend that I'm the offensive coordinator and Buck Pierce knows what's best, but I just feel like momentum and consistently running the rock as the lead back is critical. And also Brady too. I mean, he touched on it in the post game in terms of that he stuck to his identity tonight. He mentioned being the hammer and not the nail is the type of football I've played my entire life, and that's how he wants to run the rock for sure. And I mean, his statistics, like when he's on a roll, I just got to throw this in here. I just feel like we're shouting out Brady. He deserves this. Really, this is insane, DB. In the Winnipeg High School Football League as a senior, this is 7 regular season football games. 1,723 rushing yards in a 7-game regular season.
Brady.
Hundreds, yes, as a senior at Oak Park, when they won the Anavets Bowl, by the way. 163 total points, 26 rushing touchdowns. And for the season, 2,220 yards. He broke every single statistical rushing category you could. at the high school level, I don't think those numbers are going to get touched. I mean, when Evan Bonus at Churchill, like back in the late 2000s, he set a bunch of records that people didn't think were going to get broken, and then Brady came in here and just absolutely destroyed them.
Yeah.
And it's just like it's great to see him succeeding, because anybody that's watched Brady during his career, whether it be high school, whether it be at UND when he was there, and now the Bombers, they just know his potential. And I'm one of those guys. I mean, he has so much potential, and that's why, you know, I'm someone that's not quick to criticize when he has those off games, because you just know it's going to come. And you know the work that he puts in, and you know the effort that he puts in on a day-to-day basis. And just like Nick Demsky, he is one of the nicest people you're ever going to meet. He does all the little things right, and he deserves to have this type of a game. And again, it's not possible without the O-line. Thanks, Tyler Fabry, for the reminder. By the way, yep. Tyler's also my broadcast partner for the Bison football games this year, so another shout out.
There you go. Nice.
But yeah, nice. I mean, it doesn't happen without that veteran offensive line. But at the same time, for Brady, just it's great to see him really just reminding people more than anything else just how good he is as a running back.
Well, and I think it's a good time to shout out Chris Kolinkowski and the rest, obviously, of the Blue Bombers offensive line: Jeff Gray, Pat Neufeld, Jamarcus Hardrick, Stanley Bryant. But Chris Kolinkowski in particular, because the way he's been able to step into a position that is not easy to play, not beyond the physical, it's not easy to play. He needs to call the protections. He needs to be really at the point of contact. He needs to snap the ball, whether it's a short snap or a shotgun snap, needs to deliver that on time. For him to step into the lineup, take over from a CFLPA All-Star in Michael Couture, deserves a shout-out as well. Speaking of shout-outs, Michael Wynn, the Wynn Dog, watching live on Facebook. UND career was solid as well for Brady Oliveira, no doubt about that. But thanks to everybody who's joining us, like numbers through the roof, as always, here on Game Day After Dark. Mike Still and Darren Bombing breaking this one down. A very, very big win, 35-28 for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers on a Saturday night in Calgary. Mike, lots of people in the live chat pulling up the vanilla ice cream cones. Love to see that. It's almost like that's something that's really going to come out when Winnipeg's offense produces the way they did tonight. Offensively, just pulling up their numbers here, they put up 430 net yards of offense. Calgary 358. It was pretty even throughout the game. That long drive Winnipeg was able to put together in the fourth quarter definitely added to that. I've had some people mention, the kicking game and Winnipeg needing. I can't believe that conversation is still continuing, despite Mark Leggio going 2 for 2 tonight and getting the job done. There was a moment in the game, Mike, I wanted to ask you about when it comes to kicking converts, that the Blue Bombers decided that going up by 6 was okay. 5 versus 6 with about a quarter to play. I say 5 versus 6 because if you miss a 2-point convert, you're left with a 5-point lead. If they get the 2-point convert, then it's a 7-point lead, and Calgary would need to score a touchdown, and 2 field goals wouldn't do it. But with a quarter to play, and the way Rene Paredes hit a career-high 58-yarder, was it 58?
A 53, I believe. I could be
53,
wrong.
53, pardon me. Yeah, 53 for Rene Paredes, a career high for him. And he went 5 for 5 today. With a quarter to play and a team that is moving the ball extremely well, that your defense is holding from touchdowns, and you got a kicker who's in his home stadium and booting as well as he is in Rene Paredes, I don't blame Mike O'Shea for a second for going beyond the metrics and the numbers and saying it comes down to the feel of the game. When your defense is not allowing touchdowns or allowing more field goals than touchdowns, and there's whole quarter, like that could be 3 possessions, maybe even 4 for Calgary to scratch and claw back. I didn't mind that call.
I didn't mind it either. I mean, I'm sure that this is probably going to get talked about more than it needs to, if I'm being honest with you. I just think that in that situation, you just got to trust the guy that's won the amount that Mike O'Shea has won, and trust the defense. That's a really big part of it, DB, that you brought up. Trust your team at the end of the day, and the rhythm and the flow of what's going on in the football game. And who knows, maybe that call, it doesn't happen in the same situation in a different game because the flow of the game is different. Who knows in that regard, but I think in this case, it was definitely the right decision. And Mike O'Shea is one of those guys that will just ride and die with this guys regardless. So
yes, he will.
Yeah, no, I think that decision was the correct one, and it worked out for the Bombers. So definitely nothing to be mad about there. I just want to bring up, sorry to go off topic here. I've been seeing a lot of people in the comments talking about Nick Hallett and coming in and stepping up in this game, playing at the safety position. And he played very well tonight. He had a big PBU there in the second half as well for the Bombers. And just nice was hit. A sound. Yeah, it was a very nice hit. It was just very sound at the position. And he's a guy that he's a Canadian player. He's from the University of Toronto. We got both Hallett brothers on the roster. Noah, absolute stud at McMaster. Part of some secondaries there at Mac that were just absolutely lights out, very physical, hard hitting. And Nick is just a player that's just so much fun to watch because of how he comes downhill. He kind of reminds me of Taylor Loeffler in certain aspects of his game, and just how hard he comes downhill and he reads things so quickly and drops the absolute hammer down in those situations. And I think there were some people that were maybe a little bit worried that he was going to kind of be a bit of a weak link in that secondary, and that was not the case. And he's also somebody that has been on special teams already for this team and has done a great job. So just want to shout out Nick Hallett because I know that it's been talked about in the comments as well here already.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing to mention. When Winnipeg is down a starter, like Mike O'Shea does not like to say there's ones and twos and threes. There's a roster for a reason. I get that, but it's also not entirely true, right? Like the reason one guy's playing over another is because they're the starter and the other is the backup. But the faith and the confidence and the trust that the coaching staff has in every player who puts a helmet on to go in and do their job and, row the boat with their teammates. It really says something for that Mike O'Shea mentality, right? Like play for yourself. No, you play for your teammates. You play for the guy next to you. And when you win, you celebrate with them. And when you lose, you go to work with them to figure out how you can be better every single day. It really is something to witness here in Winnipeg, and it's a huge reason why they're back-to-back Grey Cup champs. They're 8-0 this season, and they're able to go into places like McMahon Stadium and come away with a 35-28 victory like we saw tonight. I wanted to mention, Michael Wynn amongst a handful of people watching live on Facebook. Steve Smith is watching live on Facebook as well. Appreciate everybody joining us on Facebook and YouTube. If you're watching on Twitter right now, head over to youtube.com/Bonfire Sports, and then you'll be able to join the live chat. We'll, give your hot take, your question. We'll be able to get to that. So I wanted to talk about Kadeem Carey. I wanted to talk about the battle that was Reggie Begelton versus Dietrich Nichols. I think that was, you talk about a heavyweight bout between the Bombers and the Stampeders. Dietrich Nichols versus Reggie Begelton, you'd be hard-pressed to find a better DB receiver matchup in the CFL today than those two. But let's talk about Dalton Schoen, because lots of people asking questions. They want to know about the eye black. They want to know about, some of the finer points to Dalton Schoen. He was, again, rock solid tonight. No, he didn't catch everything thrown his way, but that's not always on the receiver. 4 catches on 8 targets, a game high 80 yards receiving, including a long of 26, continues to rack up the yak. Very good with the football in his hands after the catch, and 2 more touchdowns, gives him 7 on the season. 8 games, 7 touchdowns, 2 multi-touchdown games this season, Mike. He is something to behold for a guy that has never played in a pro game, has been in pro facilities in the National Football League. Pro Bowler and Super Bowl champion Travis Kelce, a good friend, former roommate of Zach Collaros while at the University of Cincinnati, spoke highly of Dalton Schoen and gave Collaros, his buddy, a bit of a heads up on him prior to the season, saying, he's got skill, he goes to work. Schoen doing all of the right things on and off the field. And well, we're seeing right now the blossoming of a true star in the CFL right here in Winnipeg.
Absolutely. Very well said. And I love that little bit of a tidbit about finding Schoen in the first place and just having those connections. Super, super valuable. Craig Smith, great stuff on the broadcast. Tons of awesome comments. I know he's very involved at the university scene too. He mentioned just shows the personnel department works hard and gets quality players, not only on the field and off. And I mean, we've seen that in every position, really. The secondary is the one that immediately comes to mind for a variety of reasons. But for sure, I mean, the receiving core, they had huge gaps to fill this offseason with Kenny Lawler being gone, as well as Darvin Adams being gone as well. And I mean, Schoen has come in here and just been spectacular for this team. His route running, especially on deep balls too. I mean, his catch radius is spectacular, but contested catches, deep balls. We talked about that earlier this season. DB was the Bombers needed to find a guy that could go deep. They needed to find someone that would be able to replace Darvin Adams in that production. And early on in the season, you were talking to Jordy Wilson, I think, about this a little bit in the Bombers locker. In the Rifles locker room there a little bit about who's that guy going to be? We had the possession receivers already. Rashid Bailey, great possession receiver, stepping into a larger role as well. But who was going to be that deep threat? And Dalton Schoen has really become that guy for the Blue Bombers. And when Greg Allenson comes back, I mean, he's somebody that does a great job, and he did this in Calgary, against Calgary, of just shielding himself when the ball is in the air and making it so DB basically, unless his hand is literally right there between the receivers, very difficult to knock the ball down or make a play. But on those deep balls, it's Schoen. Schoen's been the guy. So, I mean, just a credit to the scouting department, a credit to the connections as well. You mentioned Collaros and the connection there too. And just being able to come in and have a fit, and culturally too. You got to fit the culture. And this is mentioned all the time, fit in, or lack of a better word, fit in or
get out of here.
Right? So Schoen has done that. And a lot of guys have done that for the Bombers, not just this season, but in previous seasons as well. And it's a scouting department thing. And it's the guys coming in and having the right attitude and being able to do their job when needed. And Schoen, we talked about this before. I don't want to linger on it too much, but he was a walk-on at Kansas State. So there's just that little bit of extra effort you have to put in to prove, okay, I'm good enough to play at this level. I'm good enough to play Division I football. I'm good enough to be a professional football player. And Dalton Schoen has done all of that. And just kudos to him coming up big again with Allenson on the lineup.
Yeah, he was really something. A three-sport athlete in high school, unrecruited. I think he got a Division II scholarship or a partial scholarship. He decided to turn that down and go to Kansas State in his home state from Overland Park, Kansas. Being a three-sport athlete in high school stopped Dalton Schoen from showing how good he is at football, the sport he ultimately wanted to play. Played basketball, was a point guard and a shooting guard, played baseball as well. And I talked about this on the pregame. I talked about this on Bonfire Midweek with Zach Schnitzer earlier this week. And I quizzed Zach and I quizzed Chris Walby this question, and I will now put it to you, Mike Still, and for everybody out there who maybe didn't catch that on the previous programs here on Bonfire Sports. What position in baseball did Dalton Schoen play? And the reason it stood out to me is that you think of his skill set that he has shown here, pardon the pun, with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers as a lights-out receiver. Very much translated from the position he played in baseball. So your guess, what position did Dalton Schoen play in baseball?
So I'm going to guess third base, but something's telling me it's probably catcher. Something's telling me for some reason it's catcher, but I'm going to go with third base.
Good guesses. Zach and Walby each guessed shortstop. That probably would have been my guess because, ultra athletic, strong, fast, smart, the rest. But he played center field. And when he explained playing center field in baseball, it all made sense. He says, I'm fast, he was probably an excellent base runner too. Athletic, being able to make some diving catches and things like that. The hand-eye coordination, obviously, but he talked about playing shallow in center field because he could be aggressive that way, because if the ball was hit over his head, he could turn and track it really fast. He even talked about doing like the Willie Mays over the shoulder kind of basket catch, which is what we've seen him do on many occasions on the business end of a Zach Collaros deep pass. He has great ability to run very fast. You think of that, I think it was the first touchdown he caught tonight where Titus Wall, the dime backer for the Calgary Stampeders, was with him and was running with him, but just thought, well, this ball is not going to be deep. I'm going to take it short as a defensive back. And it was the wrong decision. Schoen continued his body and was able to, reach his hands out and pull that in the back of the end zone. It's really something to watch an athlete like Dalton Schoen blossom in a game here in Canada where he knew what the CFL was and he watched some games. And it was interesting listening to his podcast on the Handled Internally on the Blue Bombers website with Ed and DC, how when he came to Canada, he goes and got the playbook. Dalton Schoen didn't know it was 12 on 12 in Canada until he got the playbook. He's like, wow, okay. Like you watch it on TV. He's watching on ESPN from Kansas, motion from the line of scrimmage, the receivers going the rest. He didn't realize how big the field was. He knew it was bigger, knew the goalposts were, in the field of play and not out like American football or like the National Football League and traditional American football. But didn't know it was 12 on 12 football until he got a playbook in his hands and was signed with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So he's picked it up quickly. Mike O'Shea has spoken glowingly of his effort and the work he does. It speaks to a lot of young players out there, female or male, football, hockey, basketball, whatever your game is, you put in the work, they will find you. You will get your opportunity. Just be a student of the game, work on and off the field or off the ice, and it'll pay off for you. It did for Dalton Schoen.
Yeah, most definitely. That's a great reminder, DB, to all the athletes out there. Don't give up. Don't just if you're not scouted, if you're not the top recruit coming out, keep working hard, because nothing trumps hard work at the end of the day. If you have that internal mindset and believe in yourself, really, that's the most important thing. Bet on yourself. My good friend DJ Lalama, he says that all the time. It's the slogan: bet on yourself. And things will pay off for you if you do that, and certainly has for Dalton Schoen. So
yeah, well, it did for DJ Lalama too. Time here in Winnipeg, in Montreal, in Calgary, I believe most recently, Mr. Irrelevant, as they call it in the NFL. DJ Lalama, a Winnipegger, St. Paul's High School, taken with the final pick in the CFL draft, and the Edmonton football team at the time, now the Elks, wanted him to play fullback, right? And he's like, they not so hot on the idea, right? And stuck it out and kept getting opportunities because he's just a hard ass worker, and put together a pretty good CFL career, and now has decided to move on to that next phase in life. So shout out DJ, good friend of both of ours, right, Mike? Yeah. And when it comes to Dalton Schoen, obviously he's American and plays offense, and it's a little bit different, but same deal. You put in the work, it doesn't matter. Speaking of putting in work, can we talk about Nick Demsky not practicing for a month and then coming and balling out like he did tonight? Unbelievable performance for the Winnipeg native. He, the numbers pretty much speak for themselves when you mention the 3 second down conversions, which were really, really big tonight, but 7 catches on 9 targets, 69 yards, averaged 10 yards per catch, and 2 touchdowns. He played fierce. He played angry. You could tell when the ball was in his hands. That one cut he made without the ball in his hands to get open, I think, for his first touchdown, if I'm not mistaken, was really, really something. He must have been working his tail off behind the scenes to not practice, at least in the open practices. There was a closed practice for the Blue Bombers this week. Very likely got his work in there. And to come off the 6-game injured list and play like he did, man, what a player, what an athlete Nick Demsky is.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny because he also mentioned, he's not where he wants to be, of course. So when he does get to where he wants to be, I mean, look out, essentially. And I mean, on those two touchdowns, such different plays, right? I mean, on that first one, he lines up in the backfield, comes into motion. He times his route perfectly on that first touchdown. The DBs get caught up with the two inside routes. He's wide open on the far side there. And that's a film study and a football IQ thing too, DB. And I think that also comes down to the game being about more than just getting reps on the field. You need to get your mental reps in as much as you get your physical reps in. And going back to DJ Lalama, he was big on that. I mean, he was huge on football IQ and being able to understand what's going on, not just understand what's going on with your route or on defense with your what your assignment on defense, but just in general and timing stuff up to know what is the overall goal of the play, what's the overall goal that the offense is trying to accomplish. And he did that on that first touchdown, and then on that second one, that was vintage Nick Demsky. He always has the head movement. It's been something he's so well known for, is that he fakes like he's going one way with his head movement, goes back inside. And as a DB, like, it's one of the first things that they teach you is look at the hips and look at the hips. Don't look at the head, because the head, that's what a receiver's trying to do. They're trying to get you to open up your hips, like on that play, and then it makes it so much easier to get inside positioning and get open there. And I mean, on that second touchdown, that's something that Nick Demsky's been doing his entire career, and it's something he continues to work on. But it, just another classic example of reps, both on the field, but also mental reps, being able to get stuff done when you are injured, and understanding the concepts that are part of the offense.
Yeah, absolutely. It goes well beyond what we just witness as fans and broadcasters and the rest watching it. Love this comment from Scott Roger, whose son is a Winnipeg Rifle.
Yeah, Jake. Shout out Jake Roger, great receiver, veteran receiver for the Rifles. That's right. Roger that.
Yep. Yeah, Roger that, and rifle up. Hard work beats talent. I remember when I was in journalism school, Mike, I had an instructor tell me, hard work beats talent. Yeah, sure. But nothing beats talent when it works hard. And these are pro athletes. These guys are all talented. They're all good. They're all physically gifted. They're all talented to play the game. It's the extra work they put in. Like, look at Adam Bighill. The videos he puts out there on his social media, the speed work he does with a local coach here, Glenn Bruce, who's a phenomenal person, as well as a phenomenal speed coach. Works with Brady Oliveira. I worked with, Johnny Augustine extensively the last couple off seasons. Worked with Drew Wolodarski to get his speed up in his game, and we've seen it. But the work Adam Bighill does with like the plyometrics and the core training, like, I said to Jordy Wilson just this week, head coach of the Winnipeg Rifles, Adam Bighill has more muscle between his, sternum and his hips than I have in my entire body. Like, it's unbelievable how much work he does in those areas. It's not just biceps and legs and squats and the rest. He goes well beyond that. And it's a huge reason why he's able to do the things he's able to do on the field. And then the work he does off the field and watching film and breaking it down. I've had players and coaches tell me, like, blown away in doing film study with Adam Bighill, and how smart he is and how insightful he is and how knowledgeable he is of the players and the systems and everything in the Canadian Football League. It's no surprise players like Adam Bighill are multi-time most outstanding defensive players, multi-time All-Stars, and no doubt future Hall of Famers. And these guys are all going to be in the Ring of Honor, with our good friend Chris Walby and so many others at IG Field, right?
Yeah, most definitely. I totally agree with that. Quickly, just a comment we've got here from Eric Giesbrecht. Demsky is somehow still underrated in the CFL. Yeah. I agree. And one of the reasons why Demsky's still underrated is because of what he does in the offense, and you have to understand and know where he is every single play. He takes other players on his team and puts them in positions to succeed, where they get ISO situations, you get a double on Demsky, or there's other stuff going on. So it's about way more than just what he does with the ball in his hands. It's about all the stuff he does pre-snap. It's about all those other things that take place. And those are things that don't show up on the stat line, but are just as valuable. He's not that guy that's coming in and getting 100 yards necessary every single game, but he's doing all those little things so well and making sure that his teammates are in great positions to succeed. So I totally agree that he's underrated in the sense of like, people don't talk about him as like a top 5 statistical receiver. And there's other players in the league this year that have had, Dominic Rhymes is a player that comes to mind, as players that have really shown out in terms of big plays. But Nick Demsky overall, as understanding his role and understanding how to help his teammates succeed, you can't buy that. Like you saw it when he was injured and when he was under the lineup. You can't replace somebody like that. So yeah, I would totally agree with that comment for sure. And I also agree with the comments about Adam Bighill. I've had the opportunity to talk to him, and he really always just speaks about how much work he had to put in because he wasn't the biggest guy at his position when he was back in the States playing. He always felt like he had a chip on his shoulder. That was one of the things that motivated him. And DB, that's a theme of this podcast we're talking about, is just some of these guys that just had to work that little bit extra harder in the other elements of the game outside of just the field to be successful. And just an underlying theme of just keep working. Don't let outside noise affect you, and block it out.
Love this comment from Waiters and everybody in the live chat tonight. Like, awesome stuff. Thanks for joining us here on Bonfire Sports. If you haven't, head to youtube.com/Bonfire Sports, or if you're already watching on YouTube, which I believe most of you are, be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, helps us a ton. And then you can ring the bell if you're subscribed, and you'll know when we go live here on Bonfire Sports. Bonfire midweek, Tuesdays at 7:30. Zach Schnitzer will be back in the saddle again. Mike, I'm sure you and I will do some more post games here and game day after dark, and pregame with Chris Walby, the legend, as we always do. The day before the game, we go live at 3:00 and do a jump in right from Winnipeg Sports Talk with Hustler and Michael Remus. A couple things I wrote down during the game, Mike, that I wanted to get to. Interesting when you think of the Blue Bombers' start this season. They're the 5th team since the league's inception in 1958. Yes, we're looking towards the 109th Grey Cup, but the CFL proper formed in 1958. The Blue Bombers are now the 5th team ever to start a season 8-0. They did it in 1962. I believe they started 10-0. They did it again in 1938. I believe was another 8-win start to the season. But regardless, this isn't just a good football team. They're the back-to-back champs with a pandemic year in the middle, and how injured they are, how deep they are into their roster without, I can just read them off here. Kyrie Wilson, all-star. Mercy Maston, all-star. Michael Couture, all-star. Brandon Alexander, easily an all-star. Carlton Agadosi, 2 touchdowns, now out of the lineup. Tough break for him. Jackson Jeffcoat, all-star. Greg Ellingson, perennial 1,000-yard receiver and an all-star. And they're getting it done without all of those guys. Of course, if they had an injury at a couple particular positions, it might be a different story. But the reality is this team is so rock solid and founded that they're just finding ways to get it done no matter what it is. An ugly game in Edmonton last week, or, a much tighter, crisper football game like we witnessed in Calgary tonight.
Yeah, for sure. And this was something that was talked about in the live chat. So it fits with what you mentioned, DB. This isn't a team that has starters and second strings and third strings. Sure, you got to label it that way, obviously. But at the end of the day, everybody practices like they are the starter. They get the same reps in terms of like needing to know the systems and things like that. So, this is just a spectacular example of that, of guys coming in and not losing anything in terms of the depth that this team has. But more importantly, DB, that was a great reminder that you just listed off literally like 6 all-stars that are not currently in the starting lineup.
Then like other really, really good players too, in addition to those guys. Like, it's unbelievable.
It's
unbelievable.
Yeah. It's too early to be talking about this, but as we get closer to maybe this, like the back half of the season, this could go down as one of the best regular season performances in this history of the CFL. I mean, goodness gracious. Like, I mean, this team and the ability to plug and play players on defense and still be able to do what they need to do to be successful, specifically because of guys like Adam Bighill and because of guys like Willie Jefferson in the lineup and the instincts that they have and being able to understand what's going on and maybe do some stuff on their own, and the trust that Richie Hall has in them. On offense, Zach Collaros, what he can do roaming outside of the pocket, his ability to keep plays alive, the depth on the offensive line you talked about earlier with Chris Kolonkowski at the center position. That was a great find, by the way, from Walters and the staff. I mean, he was a Grey Cup champion with the Toronto Argonauts prior to that. Another Canadian coming out of York University, a great program there. And I mean, that's a classic example of finding another guy that can come in and play. So, I mean, it's the scouting really is a big part of it to me, DB. It's the scouting and it's the culture. I mean, the culture has been well established in Winnipeg now with Mike O'Shea, with Kyle Walters, two Canadians, the Canadian Mafia, which was another big thing for them after that, after we played Calgary the one year.
That's a Stampeders thing, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? It's funny because I'm sorry, I'm going on a bit of a tangent here now, but like,
no, it's good.
With the vanilla stuff and with the Canadian Mafia, when it happened, you don't want to give a team like Winnipeg like more fuel to the fire because they find right. a way to use it. Because that's just, sometimes teams need that, right? You need that little bit of extra identity. Even in the NHL, the Carolina Hurricanes, when they got called a bunch of jerks, you fuel that, you use it, it motivates you, and then you keep on taking it. Even with Bison's hockey, like there's a theme for whatever the head coach is, a word. Every single year there's a word that's used for the team culture.
Okay.
And it's just a way to really keep things consistent and understand, okay, what do we want to embody as a team, not as a player. What do we want to embody as a team? And it's a team sport, obviously, at the end of the day. And football, arguably, I mean, all sports that are team sports are that. But football, you got to understand your role, but you got to understand how it pertains to the entire scheme. So, I mean, it's just a great example of how the culture in Winnipeg is so strong. And it really comes down to the staff and the players understanding that they're not individuals in this thing.
Great tangent, Mike. Just a little jab there, inside joke to the live chat. But we digress and we'll move on. Some of the comments I really want to get to tonight. But a couple people, including Fritchie and some others, saying, and I think this is important. The Blue Bombers are such a good team, such a good story, let alone wildly entertaining. And more people in this province and in the city and really in Canada need to take notice. Like, beautiful stadium. It's been beautiful weather this summer. To fill the building for the rest of the season, I think would be a great, great thing. People need to not just support this team, but more importantly, appreciate this team. And I say it's more important because that's the first step. Appreciate what Winnipeg is doing right now. This is a special moment in Winnipeg sports history. This team is that good. People need to realize you can start 8-0 or 10-0 or 12, whatever. Back-to-back Grey Cup champs, riddled with injury, going toe-to-toe with great teams, getting ugly and winning against weaker teams, just finding a way to do it with a ton of electric, exciting plays with phenomenal storylines. To see what Nick Demsky did tonight, a Winnipegger, to see what Brady Oliveira did tonight, another Winnipegger, to see Jeff Gray on that offensive line getting it done, a Winnipegger. To see the Canadians on this team from across our country contribute to a team, that Canadian Mafia, CEO, general manager, head coach, a lot of the coaching staff, all Canadians getting it done, working with their American counterparts to get it done. It's really, really something special. People need to drink it in. I'm looking for the comment that was made earlier about this Winnipeg Blue Bombers team. Oh, I favored it a lot of these, so I might not be able to find it, but essentially said, the Blue Bombers are a team that actually makes me happy in this city. Tough times for the Winnipeg Jets right now. We all enjoy hockey, Mike. Of course, we're in a hockey hotbed here, maybe the hockey hotbed in North America. if the Jets are struggling, hey, the Bombers were struggling at one time. The diehards are going to be there, but jump on the bandwagon and enjoy this team while they're playing. 5, 10, 15 years from now, things might be different. You're going to go back and think of 2019, 2021, 2022, and beyond as a very, very special time as a sports fan in this province.
Yeah, Darren, and if I could just say something personal here real quick. And also, your typical co-host, Zach, had a really, 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 really great story on Three Down Nation. If you haven't gone and read that story,
yes,
please
thank
do.
you.
It was
Thank
a
you for that.
spectacular, yeah, no problem. Spectacular story. He was discussing his journey, his mental health journey, and how the Bombers were first of all, some of the themes with the Bombers and with mental health. And he talked about his journey and how the Bombers really helped him through that. And if I can just say personally, when the Bombers won that Grey Cup in 2019, I wasn't exactly in a great spot either. I deal with my own mental health struggles, and that team got me through. They got me through some tough times in 2019. And it's one of those things where a lot of us in the chat, or a lot of people in the chat, you and me, DB, we cover this stuff, but at the end of the day, we're fans. Like, we love this team. We played football. Yeah. Like, we understand what this means to the community, and we also understand that not every year has been like this. There have been some lean years. There have been some really lean years, and I think what Winnipeg has been able to do, and just the grittiness of the team, it kind of comes into play with the community too. Winnipeg is a gritty city. It's a city filled with people that work hard. You lunch pail attitude. You just go in and you do your thing. You do your job and you do your work. And not every day is your best, but you embody that next day, kind of just one day at a time mentality, and you get through. And I think the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and the organization, and especially even when Kyle Walters came in, they didn't start off great. It's not entirely Kyle Walters' fault. He inherited some previous pieces.
There was work. There was a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do.
But they didn't give up on Kyle Walters. He wasn't giving up on Michael Shea. Didn't give up on Michael Shea. The community did not give up on this team. Never will give up on this team. And it's just amazing to see how successful they are now. Nothing makes me happier than seeing how successful the Blue Bombers have been over these last few seasons, because of the amount of work that's gone into this. And just the perseverance. It's something that you really, really need to appreciate when you think about the struggles over the last decade prior to that as well, and just really soak that all in. And I tell this to all my friends that are outside of Winnipeg. I said, when you come to Winnipeg for any reason, if you're here, you need to go to a Winnipeg Blue Bombers football game, because you cannot replicate the energy in that stadium. You just can't. Like, when it's loud in there, and and the team is doing their thing, it's just amazing. It's just absolutely spectacular to see, and it's something that I think everybody needs to do at one point in their life. Come to IGF, witness that in person, be a part of that experience. You got to do it.
Yeah, no, well put, Mike. And I love that we're getting into these things on Game Day After Dark, because this is kind of at the core of Bomber Nation. This is at the core of what makes following the Blue Bombers a special thing. I want to talk about Zach's piece on Three Down Nation. I failed to tweet it out. And, I even talked to Zach about it. And I definitely want to give it kind of a boost when less people are talking about it. But he had a great interview with Jim Toth on CGOB this week. He's had people calling and texting him and reaching out to him, tweeting him, and the rest of how good that article was. I'm going to put a link to that piece from Zach Schnitzer in the video description as soon as the live stream is done tonight. But to your point about how important these some of these things are to people, like sports brings people together like no other. Zach touches on that in his piece. It's also, that long struggling Blue Bombers fan, how special and important it was when they were able to hoist the Grey Cup in 2019. I grew up in the city playing the game, loving going to Blue Bomber games, both as a really tuned in fan, watching everything all the time, to, some of those wilder years in my teens and early 20s where, I'm in the Manitoba social of the rum hut at Canada Stadium. And it was like the cannon goes off and it's like, you turn around, oh, they scored. right on, cheers, and you're just having a good time amongst your friends and less engaged in the game. However you take in the games, is cool, right? But growing up that way, appreciating the Blue Bombers, football as a whole, the Canadian Football League, the National Football League, college and university, to then work in it now and have to put, I always say I put my fan card in a safe deposit box, and one day I'll open it up again, but that'll be a while from now. I fingers crossed anyway. But in 2019, standing on that field in McMahon, I put a video out on Twitter talking about all of the people calling and texting me, how excited they were, how joyous they were after 29 years of not being able to be at the top of the mountain. And, I take my job seriously. I take my objectivity of covering sports very, very seriously. But I got emotional in that moment because I knew how special and important it was to so many people that are close to me in my life. And to kind of bring it back to Zach's piece on 3 Down Nation, it just rung true in so many ways of how sports and the things we enjoy to get away from the stresses in life, how important those things are, how important friendships are. Like Mike, you and I, us and Coach Jordy Wilson and everybody with the Winnipeg Rifles, the players, the parents, the board members, the volunteers and support staff, just the football community as a whole, whether it's, Brian Doby and the Bison's program or the high school programs, or just the people that show up at practice and come say hello to me at IG Field, that community, like shout out Pumper. You had a really tough go this past week, and I know you're in good spirits and doing well, hoping you're doing well. But to see the Blue Bombers as good as they are today, how special this moment is, to enjoy that with the football community, and then knowing that there is support there if you need it, that there are people there that can help, and that sports can be that step away from some of the bigger stresses in life. I think, Zach did a great job writing about it this week. I think everybody really should continue to enjoy that fact. It's just a great thing. It's the reason why I love sports. I loved it as a kid because of the jerseys and the goalie masks and the football cleats and the game and the television and the broadcast and Sports Center and CKND Sports Desk with Joe Pascucci and Darren Millard and Gene Principe and all of those guys. Like, that was cool. But now that I've worked in pro sports for a long time, worked in amateur sports for a long time, like you do, Mike, to really live sports because it's my job every day, 12 months of the year. It's not lost on me how special the Jets, the Bombers, the community, the games themselves, the sports themselves are to everybody. It's awesome. It's awesome. So big shout out, Zach. I'm very envious of your courage. And I told Zach that in person this week because we had a couple good long chats. We became very quick friends because of the type of guy he is. There's nobody more rock solid than Zach Schnitzer. And well, that's why I brought him into Bonfire Sports. He's a great guy.
Yeah, most definitely. Thanks again, Zach, for sharing your story, and really appreciate the openness and the honesty. And like you said, DB, it really just comes back to the community. Sports can bring people together, and that's not lost on me. I know it's not lost on you. And you mentioned it because of the line of work we're in. We interact with so many people on the day-to-day, and just hearing their stories, it's amazing. I mean, we come from different backgrounds, but sports brings you together. I mean, for a variety of different reasons. And I think that's the really cool part about it too, is you learn about the fans too. You learn about, where they come from, what's their background, what got them involved in being a Bomber fan, or what got them involved in watching sports and supporting teams in the first place. It's very fun to be able to have that type of a community. And it means so much to me. It means so much to you, I know as well, DB. And even in the live chat, so many great comments from everyone. And I really appreciate, everybody tuning in and listening to stuff like this, and to just be here for a common reason. It's great.
Right.
It's absolutely spectacular.
Well, and like Scott Rogers says here, who's been a big supporter of the channel, and rifle up, Scott, you guys all rock. Thanks to each of you. And that's everybody watching right now. That's not me and you, Mike. That's everybody watching in the live chat. Everybody is They have fun. They take barbs and shots at one another, but it's cordial and it's respectful, and that's a great thing. Everybody is welcome here. I love the female fans and voices that join us. I think that's really important, especially in the game of football that is so historically been male driven. Female fans should take in this game and enjoy it like everybody, because don't be intimidated by it. There are people out there like us, Mike. I know you in particular. You and I have talked about this before. It's important for to women to not feel intimidated or on the outside looking in when it comes to football and to sports in general. But either way, taking a shot, we digress. Huge win for the Bombers tonight, 35-28. And everybody who is joining us here and enjoying this Winnipeg Blue Bombers team. Kadeem Carey, if I can say, Mike, I'm putting him firmly in the CFL MOP conversation with Zach Collaros, with Nathan Rourke, maybe even with an Adam Bighill. There's probably some others. There's probably a player or two in the East that might be in that conversation. But Kadeem Carey, it's not Bo. It's not Beggleton. It's not Jameer Thurman, or some of their Trey Roberson, or some of their great defensive players that they've had through the years and have right now. It's their tailback. I'm blown away with how good Kadeem Carey is. Winnipeg had their hands full with him tonight. 14 carries for 92 yards, 2 touchdowns, and had 2 runs over 20 yards and 3 runs over 10 yards tonight, averaging 6.6 per carry. He is really good. I love watching him.
Yeah, huge fan. Just as a fan, for sure. Really, really big fan of him, and very similar in as a ball carrier to Oliveira in the sense that first contact. He's a guy that's bouncing off of first contact. But for me too, it's and I think this kind of lines up a little bit with what you were talking about earlier with Adam Bighill and his core stability. It's his stability too, like his jump cuts, his ability to stop and cut on a dime. There's a couple situations where he did that tonight and just left somebody in the hole, just kind of looking at their jock strap and continuing for a few more yards. And like that's huge. And for running backs, that's something that they practice all the time. Is just that stability, hip flexors, all that stuff. And we shouted out Glenn Bruce earlier. Shout him out again. I know that's something that they work on a lot, is just the little things in your game. It's more than just how fast you are. It's about being able to control your body. If you can control your entire body and be able to sort of understand like what's going to happen if somebody is in a weird position where you have to randomly spin to your right or make a juke to your left where it's not a natural movement to make. That's something that Kadeem Carey has really shown this year, and it adds a really, really challenging element to that offense. Just like how tonight Oliveira, you had to know what he was doing, play action, and then with Collaros outside the pocket, such a threat, adds another an element to that offense. And it's much the same with Carey, where you kind of have to, even if you can force the defense to stop for even half a second and think about whether the play is a run or a pass, that split second is more than enough in a lot of cases to find an open guy, beat that coverage downfield, whatever's going on. So, the run game for sure, and just the fact that Carey has been able to literally carry that on for a number of weeks now. I believe he came in with 3 100-yard rushing games in a row. So on a very strong string of momentum here as of late for sure. And I absolutely agree with you. In terms of the MLP conversation, it's got to be Rourke, Carey, and Collaros for me. Those are the top 3 candidates. If anyone in the chat, I'm curious to see if they have anybody else that they might think might be MLP candidate right now. But I'm with you, DB. Those are kind of the guys that stand out to me right now.
Yep. So Mike, I'm just noticing. Well, not just noticing, but you're in front of your beautiful pool out on the West Coast, California lifestyle. But it is getting late. What is it? 20 after 10 here in southern Manitoba. People are curious of who the players of the game are. Who is our Walby Warrior and our Westwood Wide to the right? We also have to get into our Bonfire Burning Point, not a TSN Turning Point, our Bonfire Burning Point. If you want to chime in, hit the live chat or text 204-816-TIPS, 816-8477. That is the Bonfire hotline, 24/7, 365. Hit it up, 816-8477. Okay, let's start with our Walby Warrior tonight. Who went to war for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Or really, it could be for the Calgary Stampeders too. I won't leave them out. But who stood out to you, Mike?
Well, I mean, the easy answer to this question is Nick Demsky, just in the sense that he hasn't practiced in a while and came in here and just did what he does. But I'm going with the Blue Bombers offensive line, and I'm not specifically pinpointing one guy, just the Blue Bombers offensive line. And on top of that, I mean, Liam Dobson comes in for an extra lineman in those heavy packages. Mike Miller came in there as well and had some important blocks as well. So just the line, just the blocking in general from the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, that's going to be my answer and my pick for this one. I think that at the end of the day, they don't get as much love as they sometimes need to, but it's also a veteran group that has been talked about a lot, and being able to retain a veteran offensive line and have the depth, specifically Canadian depth, because of the amount of Canadian starters Winnipeg has on the offensive line, man, it's impressive, and they impress me every week, and they're getting my nod this week.
Yeah, Tyler Fabry throws the hogs up on the live chat. Love to see that. Sorry, to digress, I'll take another one. Nick Demsky is my brother's wife's girlfriend's son. That's the most Winnipeg comment ever in the history of Bonfire Sports. I love to see that. I'm going to give my Wallaby Warrior to Nick Demsky. I know you went a different direction and a great one as well. I'll give it to Nick. Just unbelievable performance tonight. To reiterate, 7 catches for 69 yards and 2 touchdowns after being taken off the injured list early. And yeah, I agree with Andrea, who is in the live chat. Honorable mention to Brady Oliveira. He was a real warrior tonight as well. Westwood wide to the right in honor of our good friend Troy Westwood. Back in our TSN days, we used to pick a moment or a play or a person that did something that just rubbed you the wrong way, you didn't like, was a grave mistake or a scary moment. You got something there, Mike, in this game?
Yeah, I not necessarily from this. If I could, I'd like to just talk about the Saskatchewan Roughriders for a second.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Nobody's going to get mad at you for that. Nobody's going to get mad at you for that.
No, considering the context of why we're talking about it, I wonder, DB, and I don't know the answer to this, I wonder if Craig Dickinson is slowly losing the locker room a little bit. I mean, we saw what went on with Marino, and you had some great points about that. We talked about it last time I was on here. The situation with Duke Williams against Toronto, where there was helmets being thrown and some stuff going on in the pregame. It just, to me, that's the why to the right for me this week. It's just some of the things going on in Saskatchewan with the team, and I don't know if it's a culture thing. Again, like I'm not there. I'm not at the facility. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but I just don't think that's something that is a great look for the organization. And I know it's something that's been talked about league wide. It's just sort of some of the unprofessional conduct, because it's not a great look for the league when you see stuff like that. So that's my why to the right.
People always say the Rough Riders are the like Canada's team and the flagship franchise. I might argue that in the CFL, but you're right. It is kind of a bad look on them. So good pick for your wide to the right tonight. I don't know if anything really stood out to me. I was kind of with you, Mike. Not from this game. It was just a great football game. So I will give Comet the voice and the pick tonight. Wide to the right, Bo Levi mocking the Blue Bomber bench. He was also mocking a touchdown celebration, I think, at some point. Yeah, there it is. Matt Neal, who is joining us on YouTube, says Bo mocking Nick Demsky's TD celebration and staring down the bench. That's a good wide to the right tonight. We still have to do our Happy Honker Award as well as our Bonfire Burning Point, the moment where the fire started burning and it led to a Winnipeg Blue Bombers victory. I don't know.
That's tough. For me, the burning point is just Winnipeg getting 7s and Calgary getting 3s in that first half. At the end of the day, when you look at a one-score game, that's really what decided this football game. Was the Bombers' defense held Calgary to field goals, and Winnipeg converted in the red zone and scored touchdowns. So I think for me, it would be the fact that they were able to do that successfully. Obviously, that's not one single play or anything like that. But if you talk about trends and the fact that neither of these teams turned the ball over, no sacks allowed, and this was just a great example of classic CFL football. Anybody that's a fan of the league would have absolutely loved this football game. And so I think, just the fact that Winnipeg scored touchdowns and Calgary got field goals in that first half.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. I'm looking here. at the play chart of all the plays that we saw in the game tonight, and it's, first quarter, Oliveira runs for 9, then 3, then 16. Then into the second quarter, he runs for 8, and then 31, his longest of his CFL career. A couple more runs late in the second quarter to gain a first down for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Runs of 10 and then 3, just edging for those extra yards. And then into the fourth quarter, runs of 4 and 7. Catching the ball and running 7 for yak yards where Cam Judge had to catch him from behind. Another run of 10 and 5 into the fourth quarter. The bonfire burning point was Winnipeg's offensive line that you gave your Wallaby Warrior to, and Brady Oliveira getting the run game going and sticking with it. To me, that's the reason Winnipeg's offense was able to explode for the yardage they did tonight beyond the run game, and the reason why Zach Collaros threw for 4 touchdowns. Somebody mentioned to me tonight that Zach Collaros has never thrown for 4 touchdowns as a member of the Blue Bombers before. I'll have to look that up. It sounds right, but I'm not totally sure.
That's a fascinating stat. It's a fascinating stat when you think about his production and you talk about his yardage, right? But I mean, the touchdown number, that's fascinating for sure. So yeah, let's get on that and just confirm that one. That's really interesting.
No kidding. Meanwhile, speaking of numbers with Zach Collaros, 25-1 in meaningful games as the Blue Bombers starter. Unbelievable. The Happy Honker Award is my favorite, and I always do it in honor of Zach Schnitzer, because he's the one that wanted to do the Happy Honker Award, the old from many, many, many years gone by on the radio broadcasts. They'd have the Happy Honker Award with Cactus Jack Wells and company. I'm with a comment, a Friday night at the Stamp, or family night at the Stamps game, 30,000 there, smiling children, everybody was having fun. That's a great choice. I'm giving my Happy Honker Award to Zach Schnitzer himself tonight for his courage and frankly, impeccable writing ability. Like, to write a opinion piece and a personal piece like he did, as well as he did, the way he took a central theme in like the 7 ways, it's the Blue Bombers are 7-0, and the 7 ways they help him heal from mental health. Big time happy honk to you, Schnitz.
Yeah, I would absolutely echo that. And DB, we both come from journalistic backgrounds. That's what our education is in. And so we appreciate good writing for sure. And
yeah,
that was really, really good writing. It's a must read if you haven't seen it already. Please go check that out. Zach, just great job on that piece. Can't say it enough how spectacular that was. Great mention on the Happy Honker with the family night. In general, family night is a great idea, and I know the teams really try to embody that to create the next generation of fan. This is something we can talk about probably at a different day, is just trying how to attract more fans to the game in the long term. And one of them is by having lifelong fans in the stands. My dad took me to games when I was a kid. That's how I started watching the Bombers. It's one of my favorite things growing up, one of my favorite memories, and it's why I'm still a huge Bomber fan. It's why I cover the league. It's why I take pictures for you as well for Bonfire. It's all of that.
You do great work too. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's because of that start that I got as like a 6-year-old kid with my dad going to Bomber games at the old Canadian Stadium. So great job by the Stampeders, and a great job by the league overall with really emphasizing families and really providing deals for them and stuff that makes sense to be able to get them to watch games and to be able to be at those stadiums for reasonable prices. So I just wanted to say that. But my happy honker is actually going to be somebody that's been mentioned tons and tons in the comments, so I want to bring it up. Dakota Prukop. That's my happy honker for this one, because he was also injured. He came in here and he did absolutely spectacular on short yardage today. Did tremendous. And a lot of people talk about Strevy. They brought up the comparison to Strevy, baby, and it's hard not to see it in terms of his athleticism and how he was able to really move the yardage there, not just getting that little bit of a half yard, but really getting 4, 5, 6 extra yards, understanding where those holes are in terms of those short yardage schemes. So yeah, Dakota Prukop for me, because he came in and he did his job really, really well.
Well said. I love that. I've been singing Dakota Prukop's praises for a long time coming into the season. People are like, well, Drew Brown beat him out in the preseason. And then, when Collaros got pulled from the game in week 1 and Drew Brown came in and did 3 or 4 plays to help the Blue Bombers beat Ottawa at home in that season opener. Everyone's like, they don't need Dakota Prukop. They use Dakota Prukop. They need Dakota Prukop to do exactly what he did tonight. Keep Drew Brown healthy. I am firmly in the belief Drew Brown will be a starting quarterback in the CFL one day. Firmly of that belief. And I don't say that lightly because it's been a long time here in Winnipeg where you have a number 2 and say, yeah, this guy's going to be the guy. I mean, Matt Nichols, he was waiting in the wings behind Drew Willie. I get that. But Drew Brown is a true American rookie quarterback. He's got something that Buck Pierce sees in him. I can tell the way they talk about him. He's going to be, he's going to be a player. He already is a player, a really good one. But either way, keep him healthy. He does not need to run the short yardage. Dakota Prukop has legs. He is like, as you say, Strevy baby. He can really get things moving. Last season, Mike, did you know this? Last season, the Edmonton Elks released their play of the year. And I'll remind you, they absolutely stunk in 2021, if I had to remind anybody. But their play of the year was Dakota Prukop slashing the Blue Bombers defense for a 40-yard run, weaving through things, shaking guys off. That was Edmonton's play of the year, which is funny in itself that their backup quarterback or one of their 6 guys that took snaps last year running the football against the best team in the country was their play of the year. But Winnipeg needed that. They weren't going to get Chris Streveler, signed another contract in the NFL with the New York Jets and is looking towards that ever healthy NFL pension if he's able to get into some more games. But they needed a guy like that. Dakota Prukop is that guy. And to see him get injured in week 1, undisclosed as he went on the 6th game, was tough. But yeah, there he was tonight. He's averaging 4.2 yards per carry, which in your short yardage is perfect. Your rip off 1 of 11, that offsets the average a little bit. But there was even that one play, that one he ran for 11, Mike, you notice Calgary did not even realize it was Prukop in the game, number 12, instead of 8. Zach Collaros. It was really, really something that you can do that, let alone the 2 quarterbacks you can do it at some point as well and new this year. But to put Prukop in, the defense not even noticing and going, okay, let's just run. Pick up a first down, no problem.
And you've really seen the evolution of that number 2 QB in terms of the role and the offense in the CFL. I mean, obviously you saw what Strevy did in the situations he came in, but those short yardage packages, I mean, are super critical in what you can do. Even look at BC and Nathan Rourke and that long touchdown he had early on in the season on one of those plays off tackle there where he just blitzed down the sideline for a long touchdown run. So, I mean, having somebody in that spot that can run that is incredibly critical. And it just comes back to another theme that we've been talking about this entire podcast, this entire session is just about the depth and just the scouting ability of the Bombers and Kyle Walters and McManus and everybody involved there on the back end, and really being able to find the right guys that fit with what they're doing in Winnipeg organizationally. And Brown and Prukop, both just great guys too. I mean, they're great human beings, and they've fit in perfectly in each of their respective time here. So, Great shout out to the depth at the quarterback position too for Winnipeg.
Yeah, people wondering about Chris Streveler. I do believe it's 6 games. Justin Dunk, a 3 Down Nation, reporting 6 games he needs until he's able to hit that NFL pension. I don't know. Am I telling? Maybe I'm telling stories out of school, but I'll drop this little nugget. If you are a long-term coach in the National Football League, okay, this is what I was told several years ago. Like, let's say you've coached 22 years in the league, like Bob Wiley, the former Blue Bombers offensive line coach and coach in various stops in the CFL and the NFL. Do you know what your pension is? If you've coached for 2 decades in the NFL, it's $900,000 a year. That is your pension for the rest of your life. Yeah. So you can see why players want to get like Chris Streveler he's not going to get $900,000 a year in pension yet. But when coaches, it gives you a gauge of just how financially powerful the National Football League is. Either way, Mike, do you have a final thought as we wrap things up here?
Yeah, my final thought would just be, I mean, just come watch this team, whether it's at IGF or you know, following them on TV or whatever. I mean, this is a special run they're going on. This is absolutely spectacular. Calgary, in a lot of people's eyes, and I would agree, is the second best team right now in the West in terms of competitiveness against the Bombers. We'll see what BC offers a little bit later on in the season, but this is a team that is going on one heck of a run, and they're doing it with people that are stepping up in every position, whether it be a starter, whether it be somebody that's coming in for an injured player. The depth is unbelievable on this team right now. Just check it out. This is a historical run. There's no other way to put it. It's a historical run, and it's incredibly exciting to be able to cover it live in person. And yeah, that would be my final thought. Is just the Bombers and their consistency more than anything else. Just what's going on organizationally right now is incredibly special.
Yeah. No, well said. And I think that's a great point to leave it on. The Blue Bombers are 8-0. It's a short week for them. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't even hold an open practice this week. So with their 35-28 win to move to 8-0 tonight, they have got a very short week, 5 days between now and Thursday night in Montreal against the Alouettes. They then have 7 days before Montreal comes back to Winnipeg on August 11th, and then their first bye week of the season. I'm sure they're very much, coaches, players, and everybody, support staff, looking forward to that bye week, the first of three this season. Mike, this was a ton of fun, man. I sure hope we get to do this again in the future. You're a great local football voice here in the province and the city. I'm looking forward to working with you with the Winnipeg Rifles more this season. If you haven't yet, follow Mike on Twitter. I'm just going to pull it up here at MikeStill94. These are the types of people that keep football in the eyes and ears of fans, both amateur and professional, here in the city. So give Mike a follow at MikeStill94. Thanks again, Mike. This was fun.
Thank you, DB. Appreciate it. Anytime I get to chat football with you, it's awesome. Thanks to everybody who engaged in the chat. Really appreciate that too. Such a passionate community. So thanks to every one of you for all the support and for just continuing to provide your commentary, because it's incredibly important to what happens on Bonfire as well. So thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Hey, thanks everybody. Appreciate it. Live chat was lit tonight. Be sure to join us Tuesday at 7:30 for Bonfire Midweek with the man, the one and only Zach Schnitzer. I'm going to put a link to his outstanding article on how the Blue Bombers helped him heal from mental health in the video description below, just in a few minutes if you're watching live. And of course, Chris Welby will join me Wednesday at 3 o'clock, as we always do, live 3 p.m. the day before the game. Oh, and of course, the bots show up one more time before we sign off. But and then, of course, post game, as always, game day after dark after every Blue Bombers game. Thanks, everybody. We will see you next time.